How can empires that rule over half the world fall apart in only decades? Rome controlled 65 million people. Gone in 200 years. Britain presided over 412 million of Earth's subjects. 24% of its surface area. Collapsed in 50 years. 600 years domination, the Ottomans lived on 3 continents. Destroyed after World War I. Here's the scary part. Every empire collapses in pretty much exactly the same way. Rise, peak, decline, fall, no exceptions. The data says it is happening right now to America. The Roman catastrophe, beginning with the most extraordinary crash of all, conquest. The Roman Empire was at its height in 150 AD. Though it's hard to say with perfect accuracy, estimates of gross domestic product have the total economy at just short of 20 billion sestertii per year, or around the equivalent of $50 trillion in what we would consider today's money. Italy's per capita income was 40% more than the rest of its empire combined. This, though, is not what the history books tell you. The collapse had not been immediate, a mathematical necessity. The Antonine Plague hit in 165 AD and resulted in the deaths of 10% of the population. That's 6.5 million people dead. Labor shortages crippled agriculture. Tax revenues plummeted. The economy never recovered. Then came the inflation crisis. Nouveau riche silver from the New World inundated European markets with catastrophic price inflation. Values of Roman coins fell by 80%. Soldiers couldn't be paid. The military collapsed. But the real killer? Overextension. With 5.9 million square kilometers under its belt, it ruled a swath of territory larger than the European Union. Defending these borders cost 75% of the imperial budget. As early as the 410s, Germanic tribes were sacking Rome. The Western Empire did not collapse when its imperial German army was led away in 476 AD. The end began nearly 300 years before. The geophysical evidence is stunning. The scientists using data from ice cores say that lead pollution caused by Roman mining activity was back to pre-industrial levels by 400 AD. Archaeological investigations show a 90% decrease in pottery production. Trade networks linking Britain to India disappeared. Poof! Europe's population was cut in half within a century. Cities were abandoned. Levels of literacy fell from around 30% to 5% as a consequence. The British blueprint. Fast forward 1,000 years. Precisely the same cycle would follow in the British Empire. Britain's peak in 1920 saw it dominate 35.5 million square kilometers. That's an amount equal to about 24% of the Earth's land surface. More than 412 million people, 23% of humanity, was ruled by Britain. The numbers were staggering. Britain dominated the 25% of the world's trade. London was the financial capital of the world. In the Royal Navy, there were more ships than in the second and third largest navies of the world put together. India alone, the jewel in the crown, accounted for an economy of 27% of global gross domestic product value in 1700. For 200 years, Britain systematically sucked this wealth out. But here's the pattern emerging. By 1870, Britain's share of world manufacturing had peaked at 22.9%. The United States and Germany were industrializing at breakneck speed. Britain's technological advantage was disappearing. The First World War was the straw that broke the camel's back. Britain's national debt increased from £650 million to £7.4 billion, a 1,000% rise. The cost of the war was equivalent to 25% of all Britain's national wealth. The geopolitical evidence is undeniable. In 1945, Britain governed more than 70 colonies. By 1997, when Hong Kong was handed back to China, the empire was over. The economic numbers are the answer. After dominating the world economically for a century, Britain's share of global gross domestic product dropped from 9% in 1870 to not much more than 3% by 1950. Its manufacturing output fell from 22.9% of global production to just 4.9% by 1973. Wages in Britain only recovered to their pre-World War I levels in the 1950s. Literal bankruptcy of an empire that had bankrupted itself defending an indefensible global posture. The Ottoman warning. But the most instructive fall perhaps may be that of the Ottoman Empire. For 6 centuries, the Ottomans ruled this crossroads between Europe and Asia. At their height, they commanded vital trade routes that would be worth billions in today's money. Constantinople was the wealthiest city on the planet. Beneath walls over which they seized Constantinople in 1453 with game-changing gunpowder technology. By 1683, the armies of Ottoman were at Vienna's door. They had land from Hungary to Yemen, Algeria to Azerbaijan. Then the pattern repeated: overextension, economic decline, military obsolescence. The search for new trade routes circumnavigating Africa crippled the Ottoman economy. European powers even managed to bypass the Ottoman middlemen altogether. Trade in Ottoman ports dropped by 60% from 1500 to 1700. Inflation shafted the Ottomans even more savage than it had shafted Rome. American silver flowed into Ottoman markets where a price revolution ensued. Everything went from being ×2 to ×3. Government salaries became worthless. Its military, once the world's most advanced, was obsolete overnight. European armies mastered new forms of drill, better guns, and better artillery. The elite Janissary Corps, which had gobbled up 3 continents, couldn't adjust. By 1699, the Ottomans were losing wars on all fronts. Hungary was gone. Transylvania was lost. The empire, which for long had beleaguered Vienna, was unable to protect Belgrade. The coup de grace was World War I. By siding with Germany, the Ottomans lost it all. The 600-year empire had fallen by 1922, replaced by the modern Republic of Turkey. The lesson: the mightiest empires can fall in the course of a single generation. Its bedrock suddenly shifted. The mathematical pattern. Here's what the data reveals. All empires have a 5-stage life cycle through which they all go with unerring regularity. The rising phase is characterized by rise, in which dynamic leadership either fosters military innovation and territorial expansion. During this stage, real GDP increases at an annual average rate of 3 to 4%, placing military the colossus as a manageable 15 to 20% of the overall budget. The rising period then gives way to the peak, when empires expand territorially and gain economic dominance, which also leads others to exert influence based on culture. These Gilded Ages tend to run 50 to 100 years for large empires. But then decline inevitably begins. Overextension kicks in as empires are simply incapable of governing far-flung areas. Military spending devours 40 to 60% of the budget. There's hardly any economic growth left, no more than 1 to 2% per annum at best, and inflation begins to erode the imperial base. Stage 4 is crisis, when competing powers press from outside while internal insurrections tear the empire apart. Devaluation of currency is a fast process when desperate governments are pouring out money and the prosperous trade network starts to split. Then comes disintegration, the 5th and last stage during which political dissolution leads to central authority being neutered. Economic collapse means the whole system can't be supported any longer. Population decreases unfold, and both territory is lost to enemies or given up as governing of those territories by a broke empire becomes unaffordable. Empires are the exception to complexity specialist Samuel Arbesman's rule is that collapses can be random, though the factors that cause them will stay pretty consistent. The Roman Empire did the same for 500 years. The British Empire squeezed that same cycle into 400 years. The Ottomans took 600 years, but it's all happening faster in the age of technology. In only 45 years, China went from a poverty-stricken nation to a superpower. If America is indeed in decline, it might well be the case that much of the decline could come far sooner than historical patterns would suggest. The American parallel. So where are we today, America? The signs are unmistakable. America's share of the global economy is half what it was in 1945. China's economy surged by 1,046% in technology alone from 2022 to 2023. Military overextension? There are over 800 American military bases in some 80 countries. More than $800 billion annually goes to defense spending. More money than the next 10 countries combined. Sound familiar? The debt crisis is accelerating. Federal debt has ballooned from $5 trillion in 2000 to more than $33 trillion today. That's 125% of GDP, a level that in the past has been associated with imperial demise. Currency warning signs are flashing. The BRICS countries come up with dollar alternatives. Russia and China are now trading in their own currencies. The dollar's share of global reserves is down from 71% in 2000 to 58% now. Infrastructure is crumbling. U.S. infrastructure earns a grade of C- from the American Society of Civil Engineers. Bridges constructed in the 1950s are quite literally falling down. Social cohesion is fracturing. Americans are more divided along political lines than at any time since the Civil War. Trust in institutions has collapsed. Internal dissent is subverting the empire from within. But here is the scariest parallel. Every collapsing empire believes it's on the brink of collapse. Romans believed that their empire was eternal. The British referred to theirs as the empire on which the sun never sets. The Ottomans were convinced of their divine mission. Today's Americans are saying the same. We're too big to fail. We're the indispensable nation. Our technology makes us different. History suggests otherwise. The pattern continues. The evidence is overwhelming. Empires emerge through creativity, reach their height through power and resources, then decline from overreaching. Rome lasted 500 years. Britain lasted 400 years. America has been the world's leading power for 80 years. If the past is prologue, and it always has been, America's decline may already have begun. The issue isn't if that will happen, but how quickly. Everything is going according to the RISE playbook that China is following to perfection. Massive infrastructure investment, technological innovation, military modernization, currency internationalization. Sound familiar? The physical evidence of Rome's fall, dwindling trade, shrinking population, abandoned territories, even farmland replacing cities at its heart, can now be found in American data. But there are two reasons this moment is unique. First, for the very first time in history, we can watch it unfold in real time. Second, we have the data and we understand the warning signs. The question is, will we finally learn from history or repeat it? Every empire thinks it's permanent. Every civilization believes it's different. Each superpower thinks it's the exception. They're all wrong. The story of empires ascending and then declining is not just written in the past tense. It's being written right now. What do you think? Is America going the way of Rome and Britain? Tell me in the comments and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces reshaping our world.